Castles by Stephanie Turnbull. This is a non-fiction book. It has a table of contents right here, and it tells you what you can find on each page. Let's get started. High on a hill, the ruins of a huge stone castle stand on a hill. Hundreds of years ago, this castle was full of people. Some castles were built on cliffs, so they had a good view out to sea. A huge home. Castles were built for rich people, such as lords and ladies or kings and queens. Servants worked and lived in the castle grounds. So that would be this part. Soldiers guarded the castle gate. A castle's main tower is called a keep. A thick wall was built to keep enemies out. Rich people had 2 or 3 castles. If they were tired of one, they moved to another. Types of castles. Some castles were made of wood. The keep was built on a high mound of earth. Other castles were made of stone. They had strong towers and thick walls. Building a castle sometimes took more than 20 years. Some castles had high water around them. This is called a moat. The moat helps keep out enemies. People crossed the moat on a wooden platform called a drawbridge. The drawbridge was pulled up with chains if an enemy came near. The keep. There were lots of rooms inside the keep. The best rooms belonged to the Lord and his family. A bedroom, great hall, storeroom, chapel, guard room. A castle toilet was just a hole in the floor. Underneath was a chute that led to a pit outside. Castles were always full of rats. Can you spot 10 rats in the keep? I'll hold the picture right here. See if you can find 10 rats. I'm not sure I would like a castle if it had to have rats in it. I bet it would be hard to keep them out. If you need to pause to keep looking, you may. I am going to go on to the next page. Castle life. Castle owners lived in comfortable rooms. They slept in big soft beds like this red one. Curtains around the bed kept them snug and warm. Servants had to sleep on the cold, hard floor. People in castles got up early. Sometimes a bell was rung at dawn to wake everyone. Stone castles could be damp and chilly. Huge fires helped to keep rooms warm. People had baths in big wooden tubs. Servants heated the water over a fire. Castles were noisy places. Servants worked, children played games, and dogs barked. Fun and games. There were no televisions in castle times. People had to find other things to do. Acrobats often visited castles to put on shows. Jugglers juggled balls or knives. And these are the acrobats and these are the jugglers. Musicians sang songs or played instruments. Many castles had a jester. His job was to tell jokes and make everyone laugh. This picture was painted about 700 years ago. It shows a group of musicians playing tunes for a king. Hunting. Lords and ladies enjoyed hunting. Birds called falcons were trained to hunt. Here are 4 stages of training a falcon. The falcon got used to being carried and fed. It was kept on a rope and flew after bits of food. Later, the falcon was able to fly freely. It killed small birds and came back to its owner. A hood helped to keep the falcon calm when it was taken out to be trained. It was very fashionable to own a falcon. People took them everywhere. In the kitchen. The kitchen was a building in the castle grounds. All the meals were made there. Meat was roasted over a fire on a stick called a spit. This is how part of a castle kitchen might have looked. To bake bread, bakers lit a fire in an oven to heat it up. They mixed dough for bread and made it into loaves. The loaves went in the oven when the fire died down. The oven was still hot, so the bread soon cooked. Castles didn't have refrigerators, so food went bad quickly. Cooks added spices to disguise the horrible taste. Oh, I guess I didn't know that. Not good. Fabulous feasts. Huge meals called feasts were served in the great hall of the castle. Important guests sat at a high table. Everyone else sat on long benches. There were no forks in castle times. People usually ate with their fingers. Finger food for everyone. People ate lots of meat and fish. Cooks decorated food with feathers and fruit. Amazing models made of sugar and paper were carried in to impress the guests. Knights. Knights were rich, important soldiers. They helped to protect castles against enemies. Knights had shapes or pictures on their shields. Each knight had his own pattern. First, a knight put on a thick padded vest. Over this, he wore a shirt made of metal. Metal plates covered his arms, legs, and chest. Then he put on a long top and big gloves. He wore a heavy metal helmet on his head. He carried a wooden shield to protect him. That all looks very heavy, don't you think? At a joust. A joust was a pretend fight between two knights. The knights held long poles called lances. They rode on strong horses called chargers. The winner of a joust got a prize. Sometimes he won the losing knight's horse and weapons. The two knights charged up to each other on a narrow track. Each knight tried to push the other one off his horse with a lance. The knight who was able to stay on his horse was the winner. Attack. Sometimes castles were attacked. Enemies often used a machine called a catapult. Soldiers pulled back a big lever. They loaded it with heavy rocks. Then they let the lever spring up. The rocks hit the castle walls. Enemies often catapulted dead animals into castles to spread diseases. This old painting shows a huge battle in front of a castle as enemies try to take it over. Fighting back. Soldiers tried to keep their castle safe from enemies. They dropped rocks or boiling water onto the heads of enemies who came near. Sometimes enemies tried to sneak into castles in disguises. The soldiers were armed with bows and sharp arrows. They fired arrows through thin slits in the wall. This castle has many arrow slits in its wall. Soldiers also shot arrows from the roof. So you can see those skinny lines right there. All of those little lines like that are arrow slits. Castles in ruins. Most castles are now empty. They have crumbled over the years. This is how Raglan Castle in Wales might have looked 400 years ago. This is how the castle looks now. Some castles were destroyed by enemies in attacks. This tower was blown up, but parts of it still stand. A few castles have been rebuilt for people to live in, or for tourists to see. Here's a glossary and some websites to visit. When my husband and I went to Czechoslovakia, or the Czech Republic, if you want to call it that, a few years ago, we got to see many castles, and some of them they have modeled and restored them so that they look like they used to, and they are really cool. But some they leave like they are now, and you get to just climb around in the ruins. It's very fun. And now I would like you to take your paper out that looks like this, and I want you to write your name right there. And then we are going to find out what to put in all these. The words down on the bottom are the words you're going to put in those rectangles. If the word does not fit in the rectangle, just keep going. Try not to write too big, but if you keep going, it should be able to fit in there. And I will help you out because I have one that has all the answers on it. And so these are parts of a castle. And the part in the middle is called the bailey. And do you remember in the book when it talked about where the servants lived? That's where the servants lived, is where we call the bailey. It's the ground inside there. So right here, you're going to write bailey. And bailey is right here. And when you're done writing that, you can pause right now if you need to, and then we're going to go up here on the top on the other side. And we will talk about that. That is the battlements. And the battlements are the part that looks like this on the top of a castle. Okay? So that part is called the battlements. And a lot of times when you see a castle, like a drawing of a castle, it has that on it. So you want to write battlements right there. Battlements is the first word right here. The next one, you can pause this anytime you need to. This part around the edge here, you can't really tell in yours, but on mine, you can see that that is water because it's blue. And so the water part is called the moat. Moat goes right there. It's the second word. You want to cross out the word after you're done writing it in because then you know you're done with that one and you don't have to write it again. So on mine it's blue, but on yours it's just this color right there. And it's kind of a grayish. And you're going to call that the moat. That is the water. Sometimes they even had alligators or piranha fish in there. And those animals would be able to eat anything that fell in. So you didn't want to get pushed or fall into the moat because some animal might eat you. Next is this one right here. And those are called arrow loops or arrow slits. Remember in the story they called them arrow slits, but these guys call them arrow loops. And so they are those lines like that. And it's like a little window with no glass. And then you could shoot an arrow out of there and still be protected because it wasn't very wide. So you could shoot the arrow and then move to the side really quickly, or kind of shoot from the side, have your bow and arrow off to the side, and then you not be in direct line so that you would not get hit by enemy arrows. So those were called arrow loops. That's what you're going to write right there. And on yours, you're going to write it right here. It is the bottom word right down here. 2 words. Arrow slits. You may pause if you need to, and then we will go on to the next one. And the next one is this part on each corner. There was one of those, and that is a tower. So there's a tower in each corner, and there are arrow slits in the towers, and there are also sometimes arrow slits in the side of the walls there. So that's the tower. And next we're going to go right here to this one. This is called a portcullis, which is the word right here. And it is the part that this is kind of the doorway to get in, where you get in. And this part can come down and prevent people from coming in. So besides having the drawbridge that they can take up, they can also have that part come down, so they have double protection against enemies. So that's called the portcullis. So you want to write portcullis right here. Pause if you need to, and the next word is drawbridge. That is the part that comes down right there. You see these lines right there? Those are chains, and you can pull up the drawbridge so that someone cannot get across the moat and into the castle area to attack. And so between the drawbridge and the portcullis, a lot of people were not able to get in if they attacked, which was a good thing, because if you wanted your castle to stay nice, you had to defend it from enemies. And then the last one is this area right around the portcullis and the drawbridge there is called the Barbican, or Barbican. And so that this part right there, it's kind of like a doorway or a gate. So that's called the Barbican, and you want to write that word right there. You could pause or go back in this DVD or video to watch it again so that you get all the things in the right place. We're going to review them one more time. I will do it on my color picture so that you can see better what each thing is. So the battlements was first, and that is this part that looks like that, with the part that goes up and down. And it is the top of the wall. And then the moat was next. That is the water right there. Please try to say these with me. Battlements is the top of the wall. Moat is the water. Arrow loops or arrow slits are the skinny windows that they use to shoot arrows out of to defend themselves. The tower, there's one on every corner so that they could see a long ways away to protect their castle. The bailey is the kind of like the courtyard, or the part in the middle, kind of like your yard. That would be the bailey. And then the portcullis is the metal part that can come down to protect them. And the drawbridge can also protect them. They can take it up so that enemies can't get in. And the Barbican is the holder of the gate there. They didn't put this on there, but the castle itself, the biggest part, is called the keep. So, there you go. A lot of stuff to know about a castle. And I'll be reading another book a different day about castles. And it's by Fly Guy, or the guy who wrote Fly Guy. So it has Fly Guy in it. And it has lots of cool, interesting facts. So you can learn even more about castles on another day.